Hey, Vlad here, devinsider.com, and welcome to the third video in the Ubuntu series. In the previous two videos, we installed Ubuntu in a virtual machine and we also learned how to configure it. This video is a tiny, super quick crash course, so I'm planning this video to be under 1 hour, but as I already mentioned, every time I plan things like this, they take forever. In preparation for this video, I created a super short cheat sheet that will help you not to remember all of the things that I'm going to show you. So it's over here, and I'm going to leave the link in the description. We're going to talk about the terminal itself. We're going to talk about navigation, about navigating the directory tree. We're going to talk about processes. We're going to talk about Vim. I'm going to talk about ownership and permissions, and also in the end there's going to be a surprise for you. Okay, all right, so let me minimize Chrome. So the video is going to be mostly about the terminal, and by the way, this is the virtual machine that I have with Ubuntu running inside of it, and if you don't know how to install Ubuntu in a virtual machine, watch the previous videos. Okay, so the video is mostly about the terminal, but I have to say that it's 2017 now, and these days most Linux distributions, and again, the content in this video is valid, 99% of the content of this video is valid for all Linux distributions, but we're talking about Ubuntu here. So what I'm saying is that Linux distributions these days, they have very powerful graphical interfaces, so you can do pretty much the same thing as you would as you're used to doing on Windows or on Mac. But you're watching a video on a channel for developers, and as a developer, you should get used to the shell, right? All right. So if we click on the that icon here, which I believe is called a dash, you're gonna have terminal here, and if you don't have it, you can just type in terminal. There you go, and then click on that. We can press Ctrl-Alt-T and it will open it again. I have it open in full screen because I have it configured like that in the previous video, but for this video I'm just going to minimize it real quick. All right, so this is a terminal, and a terminal is just an application, so it runs in a regular window as most applications. And a terminal is like a web browser, and whereas a web browser shows web pages, a terminal runs a shell, and the shell is just a command prompt. So this particular shell is called bash, which is a default shell for most Linux distributions these days. And you can close it like that, and let's open it again, and you can also close it by typing exit. And you can also close it by pressing Ctrl and D. All right. Okay, so let me open it again for the last time, hopefully. Okay, so every time you're in a terminal, you're welcomed with a prompt. In the prompt, you see your username, you see the @ symbol, you see the machine name, and then there is a colon, and then there is a name of the directory, which in this case it's tilde, which is your home directory, and then there is a $sign. Right, so anytime you're in the terminal and you press enter, it just executes the command that you typed in. In this case, we didn't type anything in. So a very common command is cd, which changes the directory, and the directory is the same as a folder. So if you type cd and we don't give it the directory, we just press enter, it will switch back to the home folder, even though we're already in the home folder. You can also cd and give it the name of the folder, which in this case is home. We're going back, and also you can type pwd, which will show you the directory that you're currently in. It stands for print working directory. So you can also cd into the absolute path by typing that. All right, so we're going to talk about going through the directory tree a bit later in the video. For now, let's discuss a few things about the terminal. Okay, so the first thing is that if you press up, it goes to the previous command, and if you press up again, it goes to the previous command again, and so on. And then you can also press down. Okay, so let's say we're going to press up once, and it says cd home Vlad. Enter, it did the same thing. Okay, and the next command, which is kind of advanced, but it's so simple to use that I decided to include it. If you press Ctrl-R, and then it actually does a reverse search of the command that we typed in. So if I start typing the letter P, it should auto-complete it to PWD, okay? So if I say P, it auto-completes it to PWD. And if I like what it found, I just press Tab, and then I can either alter the command or just press Enter. Right, and it prints the working directory again. Another useful command is copy and paste. So usually copy and paste would be Control-C, and pasting would be Control-V. But the thing is that Control-C stands for killing the application that is currently running inside of the terminal. So if I press Control-C, now it's not going to do anything because nothing inside of the terminal is running. But if there was something running, it would kill it. Therefore, Control-C is already reserved. So the way you copy things, therefore, is by pressing Control-Shift-C. So let's copy dev inside you, for example. Control-Shift-C, and we press over here. And I'm not sure if Control-V will work, but if it doesn't, Control-Shift-V will work. Okay, so Control-V doesn't work, so Control-Shift-V should work, and it did, dev inside you. And if you press that, it's going to say dev inside you command not found, because that's not really a command, okay? But if we actually copied a command, like over here, Control-Shift-C, Control-Shift-V, enter, right? Also notice that the mouse doesn't do as much as you would used to. So if I copy that, right, my cursor feels like it's over here, but it's actually not. It's actually over there. So if I say Control-Shift-C, I don't have to press over here with my mouse. I can just paste, and the cursor is here and it's not there. Okay, so that's actually almost it about the terminal. The last command that we're going to learn is clear. If you type in clear, it feels like it clears the terminal, but actually what it does, it just scrolls down until the last line becomes the first line. So if we just use the mouse wheel and scroll up again, we actually see all of these commands. And also a shortcut for that is Control-L. Same thing, you can scroll up a bit, and it's over there. So as you can see, it just scrolled down until the first line, until the last line was the first line. The next topic is the directory structure. So the very useful command is ls, which stands for list the directories. Actually, in fact, that's not true. We're going to see exactly what it stands for in just a few seconds. Also, a shortcut for that command is L, right? And what I'm going to do now, before we continue, I'm going to dock the terminal on the left, and I'm going to open the graphical file manager, which is called Nautilus, by the way. So it's open over here, and as you can see, actually, let me type LL, which is going to display the folders in the list, and I'm going also to switch the view over here to a list as well. So we see the same thing, right? And as I've shown you in the beginning of the video, we can switch directories by saying cd, and let's go, for example, into downloads. So if we go into downloads, and let me open it over here as well. So inside of it, there's nothing right now. So if we type LL again, it shows that there's no space required by this folder. So there's no space used by this folder. So before we continue, the next command that I'm going to show you is called man, which stands for manual. You can type in man and then any command, like for example ls, right? And it will show you the manual for this command. These days, people usually don't use it because you can just Google for these things. But let's do it anyway. So if we press enter, we see a manual, and we can scroll down and up just by using the arrow keys. And also, as it says over here, we can press H for help or Q for quit. Actually, let's quit for now and open it again. And now we see ls stands for list directory contents. And when you call ls, you can actually give it parameters. And usually with Linux commands, the parameters, they come in a long version and in a short version. So a long version like this, --all, and a short version -a. And this is very typical for long versions to start with --, and for the short version to start with hyphen. By the way, the hyphen is sometimes called dash, or I sometimes call it minus, and I'm switching between them back and forth, so sorry for that. So if we scroll down a bit, we see commands like, sorry, not commands, arguments like, I'm looking for L, and I probably missed it already. JKL, oh no, there we go. -L, use a long listing format. So let's quit and do ls-l. And in fact, we see that it's doing the same thing as ll. Actually, let me go back to the home folder just by typing cd and type ls-l and also ll, and it's doing exactly the same thing. In fact, the sorting seems to be a bit different. Let's try it again. Okay, so this one is always like this, and this one is always like this. It's not exactly the same thing, okay? We're going to talk about the things on the left a bit later in the video, but as of right now, as you can already see, if this line over here starts with a D, then it's a directory. And if this line over here starts with just an empty hyphen, then it's a file. And there is a file called example desktop. So if I go to my home folder over here, it's actually this one, which is just a link to a folder which is somewhere else. Let's go back. So before we continue with the video, let me actually show you how to launch the file manager, the graphical file manager from inside of the terminal. And you do that by typing its name, which is Nautilus, and then you give it a folder, which in this case is going to be a dot. And then you also need to give it this symbol, which I'm going to discuss in a few seconds. In fact, what this symbol is doing is it is launching Nautilus in background, which is again something that we'll discuss in a few seconds. And I was actually hoping that if I launch it in the background, it will detach it from the terminal and it will not display those errors. But for now, you can just ignore those errors. Okay, so we can just press enter a few times and everything is fine. So before we start creating files and directories, I'm going to show you a very common combination of arguments for ls, and it goes like this: ls-lsrt. So we already know what L stands for. S stands for sort, and R stands for reverse, and T stands for time. So what it's going to do is it's going to list those folders in reverse order by the time they were changed. In this case, it's mostly directories, so by the time something inside of them changed. Okay, so as you can see, there's a timestamp over here, and this one was changed later than this one, and also then this one, because this one was on September 21. So it's very common for people to go into some folder. Right now I have only files in this folder, so I'm just going to type cd. So it's a very common thing to just type cd, and then the first thing you do is ls-lsrt. Also, another useful flag is H. It stands for human readable, and it displays this size over here. See, it used to be 4096 bytes, and now it says 4 kilobytes. So this is a habit that most developers have. You know, they just go into a folder, ls-lsrth, bam, and you see what's in the folder, because usually you don't have the folder open over here. All right, so let's talk about files and folders now. So the way you create a directory is by typing mkdir, so make directory, and then you just give it a name. Let's call it, let's just call it D, just because we can. Okay, so it's created over here. Let's go in. And let's do the same here. Let's go in here, and if we type ll, we see there's nothing over there. And now we're going to create a few files. So the way you create files is by this command: touch file, and let's call it foo. So now foo is created, and also in Linux, if you call a file dot something, let's call it dot bar, then it will actually be hidden, right? So if you type ll over here, we see foo, but we don't see bar. And the way we see bar is by typing ls-a. And also let's make it a list like that, al. It actually shows you the parent folder, and you can also use that to go back and forth. So you can say cd into the parent, right? And let's switch back to D, and also you can just chain this back to parent and then back down to D, and now we're at the same place where we started. Okay, and you can also do the same thing in the graphical file manager, but just by typing Control H, you also see the hidden files like that. Okay, so for now, let's just remove the hidden file, because I just wanted to show you how to create them. All right, so one other thing, if you want to create a folder which contains children, so let's create a directory called dir inside of D, and then inside of dir we want to create subdir, and this is not going to work. So for that to work, we need the -p flag. All right, so now it actually created dir, and inside of it is subdir. All right, so now that we know how to create files, we can also remove files. So if I go back to D over here, the way you remove files is by typing rm and then the name of the file, and now it's gone. Also, if you want to remove directories, you can say remove and then -recursively, and then let's remove dir -subdir. Right, so it's not going to remove dir, it's only going to remove subdir, right? So let's type it in. So dir is still there, it's just empty now. So let's go back to D and create a file called foo again. And now what I'm going to show you is how to move the file into dir, right? So you just type mv for move foo into dir, right? And now if we go into over here, it's over there. All right, so now if we go into dir, and we see our file foo, the way you copy files is by typing cp. So if you copy foo into bar, it's going to look like that, foo and bar. Also, let's remove bar. And also, if you move foo to bar, it will effectively rename it. And also, this is the way you move things around. So let's create subdir again, and let's move bar into subdir, right? Let's go into subdir, and it's going to be inside. All right, and let's remove subdir again. F stands for force, by the way. Sometimes you need that, because otherwise it's going to ask you, like, are you sure you want to delete everything in there? This only happens if the file is only readable, which is something that we're going to discuss later in the video. All right, so let's go back to D now. So we have D. Actually, let's not go back to D. Let's create a file called foo again inside of subtier. Attach foo, okay, and let's go back to D now. So now we're in D. So let's now copy the entire folder called dir, right? So if you want to copy the folder dir into dir2, it's not going to work, because it's going to say omit in directory dir, because it's just a warning that it tells you, hey, you're not copying a file, you're copying an entire directory. Like, are you sure? And if you want to say that you're sure, all you need to do is to say copy recursively, basically copy dir and then everything that is inside of dir, right? So if we do that, then actually copy the folder, and inside of it you also have foo. And what you need to know as well is that if you want to move, you don't actually need the -r. I'm not even sure if it's optional or if it's actually not allowed. Let's actually try. Let's move dir2 into dir3. Yeah, so see, it says -r is not even, it doesn't even exist. So all you need to know is that you just don't need it. There you go. So dir2 is now dir3, which effectively renamed it. So if you're basically moving to the same folder, it's effectively renaming things, okay? All right, so now we know things about the terminal itself. We know how to navigate the directory tree. We know how to create files and folders. And now we're going to talk about processes. If we had a program in our terminal, in our folder right here, we would need to type the program's name. Let's say we had a program called blah, and we would type in blah, and it will run this program. The problem is that there is this magic place called path where all most programs are registered. So if we just type in blah, it will start to look in that path instead of in that folder. So if we want to run the program that is in that folder, which doesn't happen often, by the way, we would need to type /, right? Basically to say in this current folder, do that. And also, by the way, you can also use that for switching directories. So if you want to switch directory into dir, right? And let's go back up again. You could also say /dir, which is the same thing, right? So the same thing would apply to programs. But most of the times the programs are, as I said, registered in this magical environment called path. So there's a program called cal, which stands for calendar. It just opens the calendar like that. So we don't have to do /cal. In fact, if we do, then it will not work probably. Exactly, it doesn't work. It says .call no such file or directory, which is true. By the way, this is the time to notice that all the commands that I have shown to you are actually programs. So they're actually files that are laying somewhere around, right? So mv is a file, cd is a file, and so on. So they're all programs. So command and program is basically the same thing, and programs can have arguments, okay, which we will see in a few seconds again. So what you need to know that an application or a program like cal, it starts, it runs, and it finishes, right? During its super tiny life cycle, it was actually attached to the terminal. So if the terminal was closed during the execution of cal, which is kind of impossible because it happens so fast, then cal would also die. And I will demonstrate this based on this program called indicator multi-load, which shows the load of the system. So if I'm just going to quit it, right, and I'm going to type in indicator multi-load, and I'm just going to press enter, it's going to launch it, so it looks like it's fine, right? But now it's attached to the terminal. So if I close the terminal, oh, by the way, let me demonstrate Control-C first. So this is how you kill applications, Control-C, and now it's dead, okay? So let me launch it again, and if I try to close the terminal, it's going to tell me, hey, there is still a process running in this terminal. Closing this terminal will kill it. Are you sure? Well, yes, close terminal, and now it's gone. Okay, so let's open the terminal again, and move it over here. So remember when I showed you this AND symbol when we started Nautilus? This is the same trick that we need to apply when we're launching indicator multi-load. So if we launch indicator multi-load with that symbol, which is the AND symbol, and then it will launch indicator multi-load in the background, right? So now it's launched over here, and we see the process ID. So now if you press Control-D, the terminal is exited now, but the application is still running. Also, notice that if I do the same thing, I can just press up, right, run it. If I close the terminal over here, it will actually kill the terminal, right? And because it's going to kill the terminal, it will also kill the application. So Control-D exits it more properly. In fact, I did not know that, and when I was recording this video, I just realized that. All right, so let me launch it again, and also show you how to kill it. So for that, I'm going to use a tool called htop. Technically, you don't need it, but it's just very convenient. It just let me maximize this, the terminal first. So if you run htop and then press F3 and then start typing in indicator, then indicator hyphen multi-load. So I'm not sure if you can see this, but it found it over here. So it's underlined with this turquoise color. So if I press enter and then press space, then it actually marked this line, and also it shows me threads. I thought that I could figure it not to show me the threads. Hold on, display options. Yeah, hide user threads. All right, show custom thread names and highlight program. Okay. All right, so so let's do it again. Search indicator hyphen multi-load, enter space, there we go. So it marks it as yellow. So usually you mark things with yellow, the things that you want to kill, and you also mark, remove the mark again with space. So now this one is marked, and this over here is a process ID, by the way. So now if you press F9 over here, which stands for kill, and now we can send the termination signal, and the common one would be 15, but if you just want to kill it, you'll find this one. Enter, and now it's dead. And now if we press F10, then we're also going to exit htop, and let me minimize it again. As you can see, indicator multi-load is dead. It's not over there, and says that it's killed. Actually, let me launch it again because I like it when it's running. Okay, so in a few seconds I'm going to explain to you guys how to use Vim, but before I do that, I'm actually going to start Vim, which is a text editor, and I'm going to give it the file that doesn't exist yet. And again, in a few seconds, I'm going to teach you how to use Vim, which is super simple. But for now, what I'm going to show you is that if you start typing something over here, and occasionally a situation arises where you want to go back to the terminal and do something else, and then come back to Vim. So you don't want to exit Vim, right? And there's a trick for that. So if assuming Vim is in a proper mode, which I'm going to explain in a few seconds again, you can type Control-Z, and it's going to send Vim into background. So similar to this command, which is the reason why I'm explaining it now instead of later in a few seconds when I'm going to explain Vim. And so now you can keep doing things in the terminal, and when you're done doing things in the terminal, you type in FG, which is going to bring Vim back into foreground, and you're just going to continue doing whatever you were doing here, right? So let's actually remove foo, go back to D. And in D we have a few directories, and let's just remove everything that is inside of that folder. And now let's talk about Vim. Right, so Vim is a text editor that runs in the terminal, as you have seen in a few seconds ago. It is a primary competitor to Emacs, which are both very powerful terminals. I've never used Emacs before, so I'm not really sure which one is better, and this video is not about that. And I already made a video about Dev Wars, so you can check it out. All right, so first of all, I'm not an expert in Vim. I know about a few really cool tricks in Vim, but the thing is that 99% of the time, I'm using the 5 or 6 things that I learned about like 10 years ago, which is why it's super simple to get started with Vim. All right, so you've seen how to install Vim in the previous video, but let me just type it in again. Vim, and now it's going to say that it's already installed. All right. As you have seen, when we type in Vim and just give it a file, even though the file doesn't exist, it will actually open Vim. And what it will do, it will create this swap file with the name of the file, right, foo, and with the extension .swap. And by the way, Linux systems, they don't really need extensions like Windows, but they can have some, right? And because it starts with a dot, actually, let me demonstrate the Control-Z again. If I type in LL, you won't see it because, again, everything that starts with a dot is a hidden file. So ls-al, and now we're actually going to see it. Okay, so let's type in FG. Actually, let me exit Vim because now we don't see what it was saying in the beginning. So let me just exit it. Hold up. Just ignore what I just said. Okay, so again, the same thing. So the file is gone now. So if we open a file like that, the file that doesn't exist, it's going to say new file over here. So the first thing that is happening is, of course, that it creates a swap file. But inside of Vim, what happens is that you see Vim inside of a mode that you don't really care about. You want to be able to type things, and this is not what the first, the default mode of Vim is. So I believe it's called a model editor because it has modes. So it has several modes, and the first one is the I'm not entirely sure how it's called. I believe it's called command mode or something. And the one that you want is called insert mode. So in order to enter the insert mode, you just press I. So the first thing that you need to remember about Vim is I, and in fact you don't have to remember it because I have everything in the cheat sheet. So when you press I, it says insert, right? And also notice there was no control I or escape I or something like that, right? It's just I, and now you can start typing, and you can use your arrow keys and everything, Insert, right? So once you're done inserting things, you press escape again to go back to the previous mode. And now if you're happy with whatever you created and you actually want to write the file, because remember the file called foo doesn't exist yet, there's only this weird swap file. So what you do is we press escape, right, to go back to that mode, and then we type in colon, as you can see the columns over here, and then we just say W for write. So as soon as I press that, it will actually create the file foo that we wanted originally. So the file is over here. We can keep editing the file by pressing I again and adding a second line, for example. Now again, escape, colon, W. And also, if we're done editing and we also want to quit Vim, we just type in Q over here. So this is how you chain things, and also this is how you used to chain commands in the terminal. Remember ls -, ls, rth, and so on. This is how you chain things. Okay, so we're going to write the second line, and we're also going to quit Vim. Enter. It's quit now, and let's go into foo. And we see hello world and second line. And by the way, this editor is called gedit, and also you can always just cat into the file. Cat is an application which just it's just going to render everything that is inside of the file. I have to admit that I have no idea what this 4913 file is. Let's try to open it. There's nothing in there. Let's try to cat into it. Cat 4913. It doesn't seem like it's there. I have no idea what that file is. Well, I guess you live, you learn. Let's try to delete it. Can we put in trash? Do you want to delete it immediately? Sure. I have no idea what that is. There was an error getting information about 4913. Retry. I have no idea what that file is. Let's try to do that. 4913. Then help. No such file or directory. I have no idea what that is. Maybe it's just a bug in Nautilus or something. Yeah, maybe it was just a bug in Nautilus. Okay, so let's go back to Vim. So another thing that you should know about Vim is that if you open it, right, and let's say you add a third line, and now you actually decided that you don't want to save it. Escape, colon, without writing, you just say Q, and then it's going to say, hey, hold on, there are some changes. So it says no write since last change because we didn't use W. Add the bank symbol to override. So this is exactly what we want to do. Press enter or type command to continue. Let's press enter first, and then escape, colon, Q, and now bang. It basically says ignore whatever I just did, right? So if we cat into foo, we see the third line is not there. All right, so that's all about Vim for now. We're actually going to come back to Vim in a few minutes after we discuss permissions, because there are some things that you need to know about writing and reading from files. All right, so let's talk about ownership. So the Linux systems, they were designed for multiple users from ground up, which is why every file and every folder has permissions and it has owners. Right, so let's talk about owners for now. So if you type ll, we see that this file over here called foo, it belongs to the user called Vlad, which is my user, because it's my name. It also belongs to the group called Vlad. We're going to discuss permissions in a few seconds, but basically the permissions are over here, and they are applied, and these permissions are applicable for this user, for this group, and also for everyone else. Again, we're going to discuss this in detail in a few seconds. But before we do that, the way you change the owner is by saying do as a super user. So super user do change owner, CHOWN, and then you give it the file. But before you give it the file, over here you specify the user and the group, right? So this is going to be the new user called root, and colon, and this is going to be the group. So if we press enter, LL again, you will see, so now it belongs to the user called root and also to the group called root. And the root is the most powerful user under Linux. So in fact, what we did over here was said do as a super user, and a root and the super user is basically the same thing, okay? So before we continue with the permissions, let me show you how to do that with folders. So actually, let me change the owner back to me, Vlad, all right? So let's create a directory called dir, and let's put foo into dir. Okay, so the directory belongs to me, of course, right? But if you change the owner of the directory to root, then notice that if we switch into the directory, the file still belongs to me. If we wanted to fix that, then we would need to hold up, to do the same thing, but we'll need to say -r. And if I'm right, we need to actually use the capital R, right? Yeah, so I was right, we need to use the capital R, which again, the same as with the copy command stands for recursive, but with the copy command, it was a small r, and with the change ownership, it was the capital R. So now, LL, we see root, we go into the directory, we see root, all right? Let's go back and remove dir, and actually it's going to say permission denied now. We're going to discuss permissions in a few seconds because now it belongs to root. For that, we can just say sudo remove recursively and force directory, right? Okay, so now it's gone. Okay, so let's talk about permissions now, which is basically one of the last topics. So the permissions are written over here. So let's create a file called foo again, and we see the permissions over here, and they look kind of weird, right? But they're actually super simple. So before we continue, let me open Sublime, which is a text editor that I'm using, and let's just copy that thing over here. That thing, copy. Actually, yeah. By the way, you can also right click, but that depends on the terminal. So let's do Control-Shift-C, and now since I'm in Sublime, I can just say Control-V. So as we already discussed, the first thing denotes if it's a file or a directory, right? So let me just do a few tabs over here. No, that's actually too much. One tab here, and go over here and say this is either a file or a directory, okay? And then we have 9 symbols, okay? And there are actually 3 symbols 3 times. So if we do tab here, actually let's do 2 tabs and tab here. And what this displays is these are the permissions for the user, not the current user, but the user that is specified over here, which in this case, you know, it's me, right? So this file belongs to this user and this group, and this thing over here explains that these permissions, whatever they are applicable for the user, that these permissions, again, whatever they are applicable for the group, and these over here are applicable for everyone else, right? So let me actually put it over here. Let me say user, group, everyone else. Okay, before we continue, let me actually create the folder again, make directory dir, and show you that a directory looks very similar, but it has a D instead of the hyphen, as I explained in the beginning. It also has, it seems like it has different permissions, again, whatever they mean. All right, so in the beginning, we have a hyphen, tab, 3 digits, 3 digits, right? So all we need to do now is to understand only one of them, right? Because these are basically the same, right? So this one is for the user, this one is for the group, and this one is for everyone else. Okay, so the values over here, they can be R, which stands for read, W, which stands for write, and X, which stands for execute. And execute means for a file that you can run it, because a file basically means that it's a program. And if it's a directory, let's do that. If it's directory, then it means that you can switch into it, cd into. Okay, actually let me make it a bit smaller like that so that it fits. So unless you understand binary, what you need to remember is that R is always on the first position, W is always on the second position, and X is always on the third position. So basically all you say, does the user have the permission to read, write, and execute, like this? If you can read, you do an R over here. If you can't read, it's a hyphen. If you can write, it's an W over here. If you can't, then it's a hyphen. If you can execute, then it's an X. Otherwise, it's a hyphen. And you can also have any combinations, right? For example, read, write, and execute, or just read and write, or just read and execute, and so on. So if you wanted to change permissions, all you need to understand that R, W, and X are assigned numbers to them. So from right to left, and especially if you understand binary, you kind of know what's behind it. A W is a 1, an X is a 1, a W is a 2, and an R is a 4. Okay, let me make it smaller again. I just really want it to fit into one line. Let me remove that hyphen over here. I actually kind of want to have hyphens over here. Okay, so the numbers are 1, 2, and 4. And all you need to do is, if you want to assign the permissions to the file, is to have any combinations, combination of these numbers. And when I say combinations, I mean sums, right? So if you just wanted the execute permission, it would be just 1, right? 1 would be execute. If you wanted to write, it would be a 2, just a write. If you wanted to write and execute, it would be a 3, WX. And then if you wanted just to read, it would be a 4. And a 5 would be a 4 plus 1, which is an R, X. Actually, you know what? Let me write how they're put together. So 1 and 2 are obvious. 3 is 1 plus 2, which is the same as just X plus W. And 4 is just the same. Rx is, read is 4, X is 1, so it's just read plus execute. And also, do I have them right here? Yes. Okay, so let's continue. So the 6 is then 4 plus 2, right? So read and write. So read and write. So it's 4 plus 2. So it's read plus write. And the 7 is everything. 7 is read, write, execute, which is 4 plus 2 plus 1. And let me do a space over here and a few tabs over here. That's too much. Like that should be enough. So it's R plus W plus X. And this is exactly what we need to do when we want to change the file. So for example, we have the file foo, right? And the user, and we're only going to play with the user right now. So it was me. So as of right now, it's read and write. So read and write is a 6. So let's change it to 4, for example. And for that, we need sudo change. So we used to change owner. Now we need to change the mode, right? So right now it's 6, 6. So 6 over here, 6 over here. 6 over here, because this is just to notice that it's a file. So again, 6 over here, 6 over here, and 4 over here, right? R is a 4. So right now it's 664, but we wanna say that Vlad can only read, right? And also let's say that everyone else can't do anything. So 4 0 0. Actually, I forgot to have a 0 here. 0 is, wow, 0 is nothing, right? Okay, so we change the mode to 4 0 0 for foo. Right, now we do LL, and now we see I can only read, the group can't do anything, and everyone else also can't do anything. And you just play with these numbers. That's all there is, right? So it's just like 3 digits. The first one is for the user, the second one is for the group, and the third one is for everyone else. And if you wanted to change the permissions, inside of the folder, it's the same as with the owner. So you would just say sudo change mode -r, or sometimes you don't want the -r for everything. You can, for example, say for the directory, or let's change it to, I don't know, 664 inside of the directory, or you can say not recursively, but don't change the mode for the directory, but change the mode for everything that is inside of the directory, right? Something like that, for example. Right now we don't have anything inside of the directory, so I'm not going to show it, but basically it's exactly the same thing as with the change owner. In fact, actually, I don't remember if it's a capital R or if it's a small r, so let's just try that. Let's change mode to 664 recursively. Is it going to work? No, it's not. Oh, hold on. Like that. Nope. Like that. Okay, it's not working. Okay, so it has to be a capital R in both cases. Okay, so what do we have here? let's just remove everything inside of here. Remove recursively everything inside. Okay, so now we're done with the ownership and we're done with the permissions. Before we finish this entire section, let's actually play again with Vim a little bit, because what I want to show you is how it actually affects Vim, right? So let's create a file called foo, and it has, the standard permissions are 664, which is, read, write, and read. But let's say that the permissions were, and let's talk all about me, right? So let's say 400. So basically, we can only read. So if we go into Vim like that, it says over here read only, right? So if you try to type in, so if I press I and says warning, changing a read only file, press enter or type command to continue. Okay, let's say enter. Okay, but I still want to insert something. First line. Okay, so I'm going to say escape :write, and it's going to say read only option is set. Add bang to override. Okay, let's see what happens. Escape :write. And also quit, and bang. What is happening? It actually wrote into foo, right? So bang overrides this this read thing. Let's change the permissions back to 600, right? So now I can actually read and write, but let's change the owner. Let's change the owner to root. So basically, sorry, I forgot to specify the file. So now the file is not mine. Now it belongs to root over here, right? So if I go into Vim like that, it says permission denied. It says permission denied because we allowed the user to read and write, but we're not the user anymore. Let's see actually what happens. So first of all, what happened is that we don't even see the content. So it didn't even create this swap file. Let's see what happens. I actually don't entirely know what will happen. It says changing a read-only file. Well, okay, enter. So let's say first line, let's remove that. Let's say escape :write, and that for the override. Okay, it actually has written it. And let's quit now. Let's see. Notice what happened. It actually changed the owner to me. This is the only confusing part in this entire video. Like I did not expect it the first time I saw this, because and this is what's happening because of the way the Vim operates. So Vim creates this swap file, and then when the time comes to write, it actually deletes the other file. And because the folder, the whole folder, this whole D folder, because it belongs to me, I actually have the permission to delete everything inside of it, right? So Vim, on my behalf, deleted that file and basically created a new one, right? So if you cat into foo, we see the first line. This would not have happened if the folder was not mine. Let's actually create a folder called dir, right? And let's change the owner to root dir, right? And let's go into dir. And let's create a file called touch bar. Okay, permission denied. Okay, so let's sudo touch bar. So it belongs to root, and the folder also belongs to root. So if you go to Vim and type in the read only file, we'll type in the first line. What now will happen is that it should not allow us. Yeah, see, it says can't open file for writing. So now we have to do escape and we're forced to quit and ignore our changes. So basically we lose all the work that we have done, right? So if we cut into bar, there's nothing inside. And this is the reason why I always advise people to always open Vim with the sudo command. Sudo vim bar will actually make sure that we can insert the first line and then just exit normally. And now we're going to see that it's actually written. All right, so now we're done with the video. So remember about the cheat sheet. Before we leave, I promised you a surprise. So Bash is not just a shell. Bash is also a programming language, right? So if you say here a equals 10, then you can actually echo the value of a, which is 10. So if we go to our home folder and we do vim.bash_aliases. So as you can see, it doesn't exist yet. In fact, I had to remove it because I was playing around before and I created it. All right, so now it's removed. So if you put certain things in here, certain things like aliases, you type in alias, and let's say that every time we type LLL, okay, it should do ls-lsrth. Okay, so now if we just write this, and now if we source this file, so if we source.bash alias, source basically applies this file. So if we source this file, then now if I type LLL, it will actually do the same as ls-lsrth. If we didn't want to source this file, then we would just need to close the terminal and open it again. Actually, we're going to do it now. So let's go into Vim again and add another alias. And this one is going to be fancy. It's going to be called clean dir. And what clean dir will do is a slightly longer command, which is kind of cool. And this is a surprise. So it's going to find in the current folder everything of type directory, because directories and files on the operating system level, they're basically the same, they just have different attributes. So it's going to find empty directories and it's going to remove them, right? So let's exit and let's this time close the terminal. Let's open the terminal again. Let's say that we go into yeah, let's go back into D. And let's just remove everything inside of, let's just remove everything over here. Permission denied, really? What's in there? Oh, it belongs to root. All right, hold up. There, right? Okay, so now it's gone. Okay, so now let's create a file called foo. Let's create a directory called bar. Let's create a directory called foo 2. Wow, I'm really creative today. And so let's create a file inside of bar called bar file, right? So inside of bar there is a file, inside of foo2 there is no file, and we also have a file here. So if you type in clean D and press tab, it will autocomplete the commands. By the way, tab autocompletes commands. How have I forgotten to mention that? All right, so now if I press enter over here, what it should do, it should only remove the foo2 folder, because this is the only directory or a folder that is empty, right? Because bar contains a file, foo2 doesn't contain anything. Let's try. Enter, and now bar is still there because it contained a file. The file is still there, only the empty folder was gone. Okay, and the last thing that I'm going to show you about aliases is that you can actually override the programs that you're running. So if I type in vim foo, it will actually run vim, right? Big surprise, okay? But if you actually install a different application called NeoVim, which is a rewrite of Vim, 99% of the front end interface for NeoVim is exactly the same. So for you, nothing is going to change. So we need to add a repository. NeoVim -ppa -stable, enter, and now we just have to update the cache, and now we need to, in a few seconds, install NeoVim. Right? Yes, please. Right. So the way we run NeoVim is by typing nvim. So instead of just typing vim foo, we're going to say nvim foo, right? And now it runs NeoVim. So notice that it looks a bit different. Let me open another terminal, and let me close that and put it. Let me also close Sublime. Let me bring it to the right. Let's go into D again, and let's open Vim. All right, so see, it looks a teeny bit differently, but it behaves exactly the same. So what I want to do now is, if I go to, let's close this one, exit this one. So if I go back into my home folder, right, and I open bash aliases in the regular Vim. So now if I say, whoops, if I create another alias and I call it Vim, and I'm just going to tell it to run NeoVim, and I exit, and restart the terminal, and I'm going to D, and now I'm just going to say vim foo, and it will run NeoVim. So Vim and NeoVim are doing the same thing now. So this was just a tiny neat trick. D star, D star. Right. Too much typing. All right, so now we're done with this video. It's been about an hour, so and this is a perfect time for a crash course. So you have only 1 hour, and basically you're ready to get started with Ubuntu. I'm gonna put the link for the cheat sheet into the description. I hope you like this video. Let me know what I can do better the next time. Oh, don't forget to like this video. Cheers.